What's a truth no one wants to hear? That is certainly the case for me. We always just called it sitting cross-legged. The applesauce one sounds incredibly childish. I have only ever heard the term in kindergarten classrooms. Sitting Indian style is new to me. Entirely an Americanism, I guess. Still not as bad as saying something happened on accident. That is just so common now and it drives me up the wall. If you're talking about the farting Dutch oven, it's named after the cooking vessel that the Dutch created, because you're enclosing someone into a heated container. It's not a shot at the Dutch saying they fart a lot, but I'll add one. Indian giver. What, you guys gave us all this land and now you want it back? That's pretty rude. Yup. Our brains undergo processes called leveling, sharpening, and assimilation to fit the schemas that we've developed over time. Since memory is reconstructive, we gloss over little details that we deem unimportant, focus on details that we see as important, and assimilate aspects of the story to fit our perception of reality. This effect compounds over time. A psychologist named Bartlett performed an experiment that supported this idea of reconstructive memory. Look up War of the Ghosts if you're interested, it's pretty fascinating. I just watched Watership Down for the first time since I was traumatized by it as a young child. I could have sworn that so much was different when I watched it as a kid. For example, I distinctly remember being horrified by a scene where the rabbits rest in the field, near where Violet gets snatched by the bird, and one rabbit gives birth. Then the next scene is the rabbits waking up to a bunch of kittens. Baby rabbits hanging on a bush or something. It was horrible, but I almost wanted to see it again to prove to myself that I could deal with it. The first part, talking about the creation of animals, still freaked me out though. Scary. This may sound really stupid, but I started believing a lot more in all that clandestine, sketchy shit governments are suspected of doing after I started playing EVE, after seeing firsthand all the manipulating and the backroom scheming that goes on in the large alliances over internet spaceships. The gov sure as shit is doing it over stuff that matters. I agree with you. I think a lot of times people try to distance it so much from alcohol that they lose your prerogative. You wouldn't start drinking at 2 p.m. if you had errands to run, homework to do, and had to help your dad build a fence. You would grab a drink after all was done to relax and contemplate your day. Why should smoking be any different? It's true. My so and I smoke daily, but to me it's not a big deal. I can go days without no problem, and do so often. She, however, can't function without it, and it's affecting our relationship, because it makes her unmotivated. Her being unmotivated means she doesn't take initiative when it comes to basic cleaning tasks that should be done daily, like simple things that take literally a minute to do, taking out the trash and whatnot. Despite how many times we have the conversation, I typically end up doing everything. Last time we fought about it, she said she has a hard time getting motivated. I didn't tell her I thought we'd might be the issue, but I might soon. If it prevents you from taking care of basic chores, it's a problem. Plus, if she isn't high, she's on edge, and that also affects me. I can tell on the days I'm home when she gets off work. She comes in pissed off, and usually picks a fight. The days where I come home she's already high and everything is hunky-dory. Reminds me a lot of the South Park quote. Well, Stan, the truth is marijuana probably isn't gonna make you kill people, and it most likely isn't gonna fund terrorism, but, well son, pot makes you feel fine with being bored. and it's when you're bored that you should be learning some new skill or discovering some new science or being creative. If you smoke pot, you may grow up to find out that you aren't good at anything. That's what the danger of weed is, emo. It makes you happy with being bored. That's what I dislike most about stoner culture. They often have this revolutionary attitude, but in the end it's only big talk, because the weed makes them feel good to the point that they don't actually want to improve anything, including themselves. Edit. I am aware of the debate unfolding in the wake of this comment. In light of this, I want to point out that I was talking about stoner culture, not people who occasionally smoke weed, but people who base their identity around weed. Easy to find on pretty much every single college campus. We seem to need to be reminded of this. The scientific method, besides being one of mankind's defining achievements, is far and away the best teller of truth. Opinions based on it are superior to opinions based on whatever you know to be true. The scientific method often compels a person to conditionally accept ideas as true. To reject rigorously tested and confirmed science, it is simple babbling nonsense. I can't believe this appears to need to be said now. People don't get what they deserve. Life is totally unfair. Also, people tend to usually overestimate their morality, and how good of a person they are. There's this pervasive idea with humans about what they deserve, or do not deserve, and most of it is made up bullshit. Look at the millions of people that play the lottery, and each one thinks they deserve it more than everyone else. Objectively speaking, how can that be? Or the idea of a soulmate or love of your life is romantic jibber-jabber. Relationships won't magically work because you found that one person in all the billions of people. You have to compromise, empathize, and be ready to make a relationship work. And as we all grow and change throughout our lives, sometimes who we become isn't who we were and relationships end, and that's no one's fault. You can't always fight nature and win. There it is. This is the big one. I found a woman that I love and can stand to look in the face every day and say good morning to. I am not afraid that our love will die, but I do fear that she will. She is a fine lady, but she drives like a stereotype, and she is as majestic as a water buffalo falling over. This is the side of love they never mention. The random and unavoidable fear that they died. If she is 5 minutes past her projected arrival time, my brain instantly says, she probably died. It's time to prepare for the worst. You will never find another. To be fair, everything anyone does is in self-interest. There is no such thing as a truly selfless act. Anything I do is to make myself feel better or to prevent myself from feeling bad. I give to charity and I feel good. I'm not shitty to people because I'd feel bad. I buy my girlfriend flowers cause it makes me happy when she's happy. Anyone that thinks you can do selfless things hasn't thought about it enough. But why there needs to be this dichotomy at all? There are a lot of things in between single and married for life. Being single doesn't have to feel lonely. You can date around or be with one person for a while without making serious commitment. And even if you do find someone perfect for you, there's no guarantee they'll stay alive for as long as you are, so you may end up single again at any moment. Plus, if you haven't found someone to spend your life with, doesn't mean you never will. Elderly people get married too, not to mention date and have relationships. I guess my point is, there shouldn't be this emphasis on your relationship status at all. It's not like it's permanent or anything. There's settling and settling. I wasn't all that into my girlfriend when I first met her. There's nothing wrong with her at all, just wasn't that initial spark that comes with a lot of new relationships. I decided to stick with her because I knew she'd be good for me even though I didn't have the butterflies infatuation that I'd had with other girls in the past. 3 years later I'm happier than I've ever been. Relationships are too romanticized. Find someone you can build a life with, and who you can trust. The rest is bullshit. Your heart doesn't make good decisions, your head does. I don't think it's as bleak as this. In reality, there's probably thousands of people out there that you could be happy with. Who you end up with is a matter of circumstance. But if you find someone who makes you happy, it's worth it to hang on to them and put in the work. No one has a perfect partner. If you are lucky enough to connect with someone as a friend and a partner, don't take it for granted. Some people are not lucky enough to connect with another person to the point where they're happy. You shouldn't settle, but you should appreciate what you have for what it is. People cheat and break up because the grass is always greener. But at the end of the day, people just want someone who cares about them, who they can talk to, and who they can depend on. Love is friendship, companionship, and most importantly, a choice to stick by another person through tough times. Passion waxes and wanes. It comes down to this: who do you want to tell about your day? Who is the first person you call when you are sad? Who knows you better than anyone? If you find that, you're not settling, you're choosing to fight for something that's worth the effort. Despite recognizing that there are probably other people in the world that you could be equally happy with. If you don't find someone who makes you happy, that's settling. Not having a rainbows and puppies and Cinderella slipper relationship isn't settling, it's reality. I think it's more romantic. Soulmate is a relative term, not an absolute truth. You get to choose your partner, and you have to make the choice to keep choosing them, every day, for the rest of your life. Doctor, appreciate what you have for what it is. Give and receive love in an honest way. Find a person that makes you feel safe, validated, and heard. If you do that, you'll never settle. I have a massive problem with those lower your standards suggestions. Yes, there are people who try to bat completely above their league, but that's a different beast, and that's their problem, not mine. If they want nothing less than a 10/10, then they want nothing less than a 10/10, and that's all fair and good. Best of luck, have fun, wishing you all the greatest success. But me? Christ, I want to settle down with someone because I love them, not because I ran out of options. Everybody will die. Your parents that gave you life, they will die. Your friends that you cannot imagine living without because they are awesome, they will die. Your soul that you love so much, he or she will die. Your future child, that you raised, will raise, they will die. Your dogs/cats/pets that kisses you after a long day and loves you so much, they will die. You awesome being, you will also die. Yes, we will be all remembered for quite a while, but after a few decades, no one will remember us. Great question. During the Bronze Age, last names were highly uncommon, especially in the Middle East. Instead, in order to differentiate two people of the same first name, the father's first name and context was often included as their full name. Bin something equals son of something. This tradition is now commonly replaced by the last name of the father, and without the context, that is son of part. Yeshua wasn't regarded by the majority as the Son of God during his time, or that Mary was impregnated by God. Angel. Yet everyone was referred to by first name and first name of the father. Think of father here in pragmatic terms, that is, there's young Yeshua, my neighbor, living in the house of Yosef, whose brother's name is James ben Yosef, James son of Joseph. That you are what you do day by day. It's related to the you judge other people by their actions but yourself by your intentions. For example, if you're an entrepreneur, then you do little things, or big things, most days to get your business off the ground. You're not an entrepreneur if you've had a vague idea about starting a business someday but haven't actually done anything about it. Likewise, if you want to lose weight, get healthier, learn better social skills, you need to actually take regular day-by-day steps towards doing that. Think I've wandered from my original point, but basically, the accumulation of lots of little daily efforts towards something is much more likely to get you to where you want to be than one giant maximum effort style leap. So many people don't want to hear that. They want the magic button, the instant result. That's why weight loss gimmicks and pyramid schemes have a market. That in the grand scheme of things, nothing really matters. We are floating through an infinitely expanding universe on a speck of dust with no real purpose or guide. So go ahead and eat that cookie. You earned it. Edit. Sounds like some of you haven't been having your government-mandated existential crisis. Some stupidly high percentage, I think 80%, of people think that they're above average drivers. I'll try to find my source, since I'm pulling this statistic from memory. Edit. Apparently the percentage is 90%. People suck. Bathurst, J. Walton, D. 1998, an exploration of the perceptions of the average driver's speed compared to perceived driver safety and driving skill. Accident Analysis and Prevention, 30, 821-30. Not inherently. Just because I'm an alcoholic, doesn't mean that I can't correctly identify you as an alcoholic. It's only when I start implying you're a lesser person than me because you're an alcoholic that I start being hypocritical and wrong. There are varying degrees of privileged people. Those who actively use it, those who don't, those who are aware of it, those who aren't, and it's incredibly short-sighted to pigeonhole every privileged person based on that they are perceived to be privileged by others rather than by their actions or intentions. Yeah, a lot of it was pressure though. My mom always gave us much larger than average dinners, and would always ask me if I wanted more after eating, and if I said no, she'd say please, I just spent hours cooking it. I now get my own stuff and don't put as much, and if she cooks and asks me to eat seconds, I say no anyways. I've been losing weight since then. I was 290 pounds, now I'm 265 pounds after 3 months and losing more. I feel ya. I cut down my portion sizes and I eat a lot less than before, but my husband acts like I'm on the verge of an eating disorder. No honey, I still get my calories in, I'm just not worried about finishing every last bite. If I'm full, I stop. My in-laws take it personally too. Just because I only want 2 tacos and 1 serving of rice, doesn't mean that I don't like it. I fucking love their tacos. An easy little thing that will help is to use smaller plates and bowls. It sounds kind of silly, but people tend to fill up the plate or bowl. So going smaller will essentially cap your portion sizes. It's not gonna change lives alone, but it's a good little way to help prevent you or whoever is serving you from even accidentally giving larger portions. Growing up, My school system had a random week-long break in February. One of my friends was rich and would go to Disney World every year. My now husband got to go with them. He was closer with this friend. My in-laws tried to insist on him staying home because they couldn't afford to pay his share, but the friend's mom insisted that she had no problem covering everything. They flew there, stayed in a Disney hotel, and not the cheapest one, and spent multiple days at the park. Really nice family, just had lots of cash. My husband mentioned to this friend a few years back that we had taken our foster daughter on vacation to Mackinac Island, in Michigan, and he was like, "Oh, did you stay at the Grand Hotel?" Number. That's a 4-star hotel on the island that was featured in the movie Somewhere in Time. We stayed at a family-friendly hotel off the island that we could afford on the salaries of a high school teacher and a graduate student. I didn't know fencing was considered a rich sport until recently. Fenced for a few years despite being extremely working class. My HS hosted a club and we paid £20 a month to go once a week, borrowed gear from the club every week. It was a blast. Although I was never a competition fencer, just trained at the club and had a few duels between club members, so maybe that's why I never saw it as rich sport. As a fencer, yes, for the most part. My club had a financial aid application. But those aren't common. All clubs do loan gear, but having your own is much better. The upkeep is also another problem since gear breaks down. I guess to lower the cost, I try to do some repairs myself, but I don't have all the tools to do that. Unfortunately, I didn't grow up rich and got started through my public high school's team. When I decided I wanted to get into it more, the prices weren't great. As a diver, I can firmly say our sport has two categories of divers. You have tons of rich asses who dive maybe once a year in some wonderful tropical location they flew to, but suck at the sport because they rarely ever practice. These are the kinds of folks who will show up with thousands of dollars worth of gear, but can't remember how to put it on. Conversely, there's also a big contingent of divers who are more working middle class, and who dive wherever the hell they can locally. They usually don't have the most modern gear, but they get a good amount of practice in whatever lake, river, pond, or other body of water they can access locally. It still isn't a cheap sport, but doing a few days of diving a year gets a lot less pricey when you're not flying to another country for it. They still have them. I'm sure they will keep them until they pass naturally. These horses live a better life than most people. They get great medical care and are fed very well. The few of us who work at there love them a ton, so we always spent time with them aside from just doing out job. Yup, I was hired to take care of this rich family's 6 horses who lived in the most beautiful barn I have ever seen. No one rode the horses or even came to see them. The wife liked to see them from her window. It was ridiculous, but they paid me pretty well for barn work and the job was ridiculously easy. This is basically my grandmother. She's always been a free spirit kind of person, which I respect immensely, but this also means she owns and loves her horses and will remain poor while keeping them, to say nothing of her need to own no less than 4 dogs at any given time. At one point she even lived in the attic above the stable. I didn't know if I loved that or pitied her for it. That being said, she taught me how to ride and that was lots of fun. Wish I could do that more often. She seems to love taking care of her horses and doesn't regret it at all, so I say more power to her. The math for us at 2 kids was basically that we could remodel the basement so our au pair has a room, and after a year we'd come out ahead relative to daycare for 2 kids. Plus the pandemic happened and we were some of the only parents we know who still had regular help with the kids. It's saved us a ton of money. And our au pair has been amazing. She stayed on a 2nd year and got engaged to an American here, so she's going to stay in the US after she maxes out her time in the program. Prob will stay on with us as a permanent nanny too. We looked into this too, and the reason is the marginal cost per kid is 0, whereas at daycare it's paying for the entire 2nd kid. That's where the economics gets into play. It would have been $250/kid/week at daycare, or $500 per week total for $24K at a relatively cheap daycare, plus driving and everything else. An au pair is typically $200-250/W plus about $10K per year program fee for a total of $23K, versus $26K. Plus you need to have a room in your house dedicated. So for 2 kids it's a little less than break even, for 3 kids it's way cheaper, and you have to imagine the stress of illness, driving to and from. You can dictate what the kid does and learns, etc. Honestly, the fact is, we are in a society where paying other humans to do anything is ludicrously expensive, mostly because we have no safety net. So when you start paying for anyone, especially a citizen non-student who is not subsidized or anything, you have to imagine your fee going to pay for the health and other insurance, eventual retirement, transportation, etc. It's why even if you have like an engineering salary, you pay people more than you earn per hour to do even non-technical labor, like cleaning or painting or whatever, with the understanding that things like plumbing, electrician, those should probably cost money due to the education and skill requirements. It goes both ways though. This person is leaving their home and moving to a new country, even if only for a year or less, to a brand new family they know nothing about. They do not know the family dynamic there or how the husband or wife acts. They are going to have to take care of children that could be little bastards for all they know. It is scary on both ends. I had an au pair when my kids were under 5, that's when daycare is most expensive. And you're right, what you pay is fairly low because they are exchange students and they have other experiences outside of the family. This is a well-regulated occupation. We loved our au pair and are still in touch 20 years later. You don't actually pay the au pair much, I think. You do room and board, some fees, and then the cultural exchange aspect means the au pair has time off to experience the culture or whatever. Probably very hit or miss depending on who you get, but probably not a bad option if you have older kids versus dealing with school before and after care or something. My sibling has 2 kids, works, and a spouse that works. They compared pricing of daycare versus getting an au pair, in the form of a foreign college student. Now, I don't know offhand if the au pair was cheaper, or how much more expensive, but I do know that's the option they went with because it made more economic sense. Not like they live in New York City, LA, or anything like that either. They're semi-rural in a Midwest state. That having a whole-ass person live with you to help with the kids is economically comparable to dropping your kid off at a daycare is bonkers. My fiancé was telling me a story about the exchange students that lived with them and how they were so nice and would help take care of the house. I asked her why her exchange students stayed with them for so long, when all my high school exchange student friends had only stayed for a semester. It was at that moment she realized that she grew up with Swiss nannies. Anything that doesn't match the climate of where they grew up. If they grew up in the desert but they're ace skiers, then I assume they had the money to travel a lot and own all the gear, etc. Edit. I should clarify, my statements are based on my experience in Australia. I was unaware that Yank geography had so many places you could ski close to deserts. In Australia there are only about 2 places you can do it, and it's super expensive. It was much cheaper in Europe, which is why I learned there, but growing up, the only people I knew who did it regularly were super rich. That was my exact experience with golf. Loved the sport casually when I was young. I enjoyed the tournament the local course ran. It was basically a summer camp with prizes for the best golfers, and my parents assumed that I wanted to play competitively. I got a set of very nice clubs and was enrolled in a bunch of golf leagues that were pretty competitive, and it'd be shit like we'd drive 2 hours to a course where I'd play 18, then spend hours waiting for everyone else to come in to see the scores. It was all very competitive and I hated it. I just wanted to drive 15 minutes and play a casual 9 with my grandpa. It slowly killed my enjoyment of the game to the point that until this summer the last round I played was almost 8 years ago. Growing to enjoy the sport again, but playing competitively really killed my love of the game so much. You see these kids rock up that probably would rather be somewhere else with these overbearing fathers who are trying to live their dreams through the kids, screaming at them for just having fun and not knocking a thou off their lap time. The setups, the gear and even the vehicles they transport their carts in are stupid money. Change a few nouns and you have just described pretty much any youth sport. Source: I coach a 10U tournament baseball team. And to be fair, most of the kids at that level genuinely want to be there, but I can point you to at least 2 kids on my team that are there to make mom and dad happy, and for no other reason. These are also the kids with the most expensive gear and sub 100 batting averages. Timmy's not going to become an all-star hitter with that $350 bat if he dives out of the box on any pitch that looks like it might be a little inside. That shit is expensive. I had a 500-pound twin-engine go-kart that I ripped around the track every so often, but we go in cheap. Free as a mate did some work there. You see these kids rock up that probably would rather be somewhere else with these overbearing fathers who are trying to live their dreams through the kids, screaming at them for just having fun and not knocking a thou off their lap time. The setups, the gear and even the vehicles they transport their carts in are stupid money. We used to take their tires as they would one race and bin them, but they still go for ages just fine for us. Recreationally, if you just want to do it as a fun day out and hire, it's still expensive. Dude, this all the way. People think just horse riding is expensive. Really isn't that bad if you don't own a horse. It's owning a horse where it gets expensive. Imagine needing 4 or 5 well-trained horses to compete in a single game, and those horses need people to care for them, work them, and tack them up during the event. All that means you're spending a lot of money on what is essentially soccer or hockey on horseback. Training might be a bit of an exaggeration in this case. Basically, I had 2 roommates. I don't want to use their names without permission, and even then, I'd rather not make doxing me too easy. These two roommates had a hustle that took them between Chicago and California regularly, with them spending more time in California than Chicago. They would train with one of the Machado brothers, fairly certain it was Jean-Jacques. When in California, they had gotten turned into BJJ through someone they knew through their judo school. Anyway, when they came back to Chicago, they started sharing some of what they learned with me. Within a few months, we had 4 or 5 guys who would meet in the basement of our rented house to learn that ultimate fighter shit, as one of the 5 so eloquently put it. When I moved out of that house, I sorta just slowly tapered off my involvement. Falling in love can do that. From what I heard back then, one of them mentioned to Machado what they were doing, and he was less than supportive and told them they could stop teaching in Chicago or they could stop training under him in California. I had little to do with BJJ for years after that, and it wasn't until a few years ago that I started real training. At my gym, I joke that I've been training for 20 octoseconds and still suck this bad. Yep, I went to the Santa Barbara Polo Club a few times for polo. They tie the horses up before the game for everyone to inspect. The horses are amped, they know what's coming, and they are excited as hell. It's a trip. My daughter used to ride competitively, not polo, but English and Western, with the daughter of a friend of ours. The friend had a BF that played polo. Just doing that, a word of caution: if you want to do horse anything competitively, it's easier just to set fire to piles of money. A good friend of mine, his daughter got a scholarship to our alma mater for equine sports. Trust me, it's cheaper to not have the scholarship and to just pay for college. But it's cool as hell, grant you that. Years ago, I worked for Wrigley, gum company now owned by Mars, when it was still owned by the Wrigley family and William Wrigley Jr. was the CEO. My second day, I ran into Mr. Wrigley in the elevator but didn't know who he was. During our small talk, it came out that I train BJJ, still very new in the US till 20 octoseconds ago, and I ended up asking him what sports he played. His response: "Oh, I play a little pickup polo from time to time." I can't even imagine how the hell a pickup game of polo might materialize. I can't imagine a dozen or so billionaires out riding their favorite polo horse and just happen to run into one another at the park. My cousin, poor, bought 4 Banksies for a total of $750 that is now worth over 6 figures. He thought they were cool and he lived in an area where Banksies started. He has the kid with the kite and I forgot the other one, but 2 of each. Hasn't bought another piece of art and is selling 1 of each this year. It's his retirement. His dad was super jealous and spent all his retirement, maybe $140K max, trying to hit on something and is now broke. Yeah, it's not too bad, but still quite expensive as a just because hobby. The ground school isn't terrible, honestly. It's a few $100s online or closer to $1,000 in person. You need at least 40 hours flight time. Most people average closer to 55-60. Half, or more, of that time is going to be with an instructor at an hourly rate, plus you need to pay for plane rental plus fuel. Typically it's around $110–124 per hour, depends on market and fuel costs. So let's estimate $1K for ground, $6K for plane, and probably 20 hours of instruction at $45 per hour, $900, that comes out around $7,900. I'd round up closer to $10,000 for a private pilot's certificate. It's not Richie Rich status, but it's definitely above most folks' reach.